to talk about you, brought to you by the USA Fibroid Centers, where we're dedicated to not only offering you information about fibroids, but also about fibroid treatments like the UFE. So join us each month for our open conversations, our honest conversations about fibroids, where we're going to help you through your healing journey. See you soon. And tonight we are talking about a very interesting topic that I think you guys are going to enjoy. We are talking about something that really usually is a little taboo to talk about, but I believe that it is for us to discuss openly. And this is something that we whisper about, and it deserves to have this conversation. And it is the impact of fibroids and intimacy. Yes, we're talking about our intimate moments when we are suffering with fibroids. I do want to introduce this dynamic couple to everybody that's watching us. If you do not know them, it would behoove me to give their accolades because they are deserving of them. But first we have Dr. Wakea Nikki Brown. We call her Nikki, and she is director and the teacher of development for the Clayton County Public Schools. She is a women's empowerment speaker and an educational consultant, and our special guest tonight. And of course, she is the better half of not only not the doctor, I call him doctor, but it's Mr. Keith Brown. We call him Mr. I'm Possible. He is an award-winning speaker, trainer, author, executive coach, and community advocate. He is also an integral part of the USA Fibroid Centers and Fibroid Awareness. He has done so many of our events. He has inspired and encouraged the women from near and far, and we are so grateful to have you on our show. And then last but certainly not least, my better half, my husband, my king, the one I call my best friend. He is my leader. He is my king. But he is not only the dynamic faith leader and the pastor of our church, Forward Church, located here in Maryland. And of course, he is my husband, and he is also one of our honorary ambassadors. He has come and he has given special words of encouragement as well to the women across the country. Welcome to our show, Pastor Kym. Issue with fibroids. And I want to jump right in with you, Dr. Nikki, and let's talk a little bit about your incidents with fibroids and how it affected your life. Tell us first when you first discovered you had fibroids and some of the symptoms that you encountered.
Sure, not a problem. Keith and I were married back in 2002. And during that time frame, just various changes within my body, not to mention, we were looking forward to, getting pregnant, being able to have a child. So I noticed the flow of my menstrual cycle just kind of picking up some and just some pain in my lower belly, as well as towards my back or rectum area, just uncomfortable sitting down, things of that nature, just some changes. So went on into the doctor, of course, wanted to let them know about us constantly trying and it not working in terms of getting pregnant. But then the doctor did tell me that that I did, via ultrasound, things of that nature, that I had a fibroid that was the size of a small grapefruit or whatever. And from there, provided me with, I was not on any medication or anything like that, but provided me with strategies, tips, and steps in terms of wellness changes that I could make, For me, one of the things that I did, because one of the main things was the embarrassment of the heavy menstrual cycles. And when I say that, I mean having to do things that I'd never done before. And that would be sometimes, and I don't know how deeply involved I can get here, but sometimes having to wear the tampon, but also sanitary napkins,
you can definitely, you're in a comfortable place to do that.
Yes, sure. Just to ensure that, because I'm working, in the schools at the particular time, leakage and things of that nature. And those were things I was experiencing, which was not the norm for me. And then from there, of course, just the pain that I was experiencing. So, and that would be throughout, and for me, it was more so during my menstrual cycles. That's when I felt it. But then the pain that I felt towards my back or near the rectum area, that was whether I was having my menstrual cycle or not. So just wondering what that was, what was going on. We didn't know if it was endometriosis. That's what I was kind of thinking, because, you start researching every single thing, trying to determine what it could be. And then from there, the one thing that I did is I changed my entire lifestyle and things that I was doing to try to rectify the situation and be very consistent with making some changes. My mom also had fibroids, and that was when I was in college, but she ended up having a full and complete hysterectomy. So due to the pain, due to the menstrual things, the pain in her back, the heavy flow of her cycles, just being in a very uncomfortable and a painful place. So she ended up having a full hysterectomy. So yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
those moments. Were you fearful? Was there confusion? Was there frustration? Were you able to go to the doctor and rectify whether it was a fibroid? Or tell us how that those moments were for you.
Well, it was fearful because of the changes. First of all, I will say that because when things change in your body, I've never had issues or problems really with my menstrual cycle. I was the one in the family where it was more textbook. Even my sister, all the way from middle school, had to start taking birth control due to the how can I say it, the pain,
Mm-hmm.
the intense heavy flow and different things like that with her menstrual cycle. That wasn't me, but then it started. So I'm in that place now. So for me, when I was told I had the fibroid, of course I wanted to know what could I do to alleviate the pain, be able to move through the process. I already knew that my mom had had a full and total hysterectomy, and then we wanted to have a child. So those were some of the fears that I had. You first of all not knowing what it was. Is it endometriosis? What is it? And then finding out about that small grapefruit-sized fibroid that I did have. So those
Wow.
were just not quite knowing, but being willing to see what I could do to make the lifestyle changes in reference to being able to work on it in terms of my wellness and do it in a more holistic manner.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us, if you don't mind, how the
Mm-hmm.
fibroids affected your intimacy. Like, were there physical or emotional things that you encountered with your husband?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, just talk to us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, it was my menstrual cycles were somewhat sporadic as well, and because of the heavy flow or whatever, of course, there were times that we just weren't intimate. Because of the length of my cycle, the flow of my cycle, and then it being sporadic in different things. However, one of the things that made it whereas I was uncomfortable with being intimate with Keith was not so much the pain that I felt during, but it was after intercourse. So I
Mhm.
was very sore in my lower belly and things of that nature, just the knowing what it would be like afterwards. So from there, just kind of, and he knows it because we're very, very close. And one of the things I would just say is, and I think in the very beginning, the initiation, him initiating, but me just being kind of closed off.
Mhm.
But then I had to explain for the simple fact that, you don't want to not, especially if my cycle's not on, because the days are longer. So I don't have my menstrual cycle at this time. So it just became, I just had to tell him, I can't, I just, the last time, and I know the first couple of times or whatever, as I'm going through this, it was just, I just didn't feel good afterwards. I didn't feel good at all. Um, um, we just had, he just understood. And from there, we cuddle, we do all of those things. And, for me also, in terms of the intimacy is a lot of things for us. And I
Mhm.
think that is one of the things we learned during that process of going through that situation in terms of the fibroids. And he was very receptive. He was very understanding, and we could show affection in different ways. And those are some of the things that we learned. And I just appreciated the fact that he didn't shut down. I appreciated the fact now in the very beginning stages, we had to have conversations. He
Okay.
was there with me. I was going through the processes. So the menstrual piece, yeah, get it, got it, or whatever. And however, but when my menstrual cycle's not on, so why not now? So that in the beginning, that was something that I know I had to really I had to have him to have a very clear understanding. It's not you, because I'm not gonna lie. At one point, I know in the very beginning that was a question.
Mhm.
You know,
Same for us.
yeah,
Mhm.
that was a question, and it was not. But I needed him to have a very clear understanding of what I was going through, and when he did, it was what it was. He was just very supportive of me in the processes, and
So,
very. Mhm.
and I appreciate that for him, about him, because that's one of the similarities. One of the things that I think why our husbands have bonded so,
Mhm.
because both of them are very empathetic to the needs and the issues that we both faced having fibroids. It's really difficult to put an exact number on the amount of couples that face intimacy issues as
Yes.
it relates to fibroids and fibroid
Yes.
disease. But what I will say is that it is a chronic illness, and it is often has definitely a negative impact on sexual satisfaction and relationship
Yeah.
quality. Right before I met my husband, well, many years before I met my husband, I was diagnosed with uterine fibroid disease, and I had 12 large fibroid tumors, one of which was the size of a grapefruit, and then a multitude of others that were various sizes, grapefruit and smaller. And I would bleed very heavily. And of course, marrying a pastor, we, were excited to consummate our marriage,
Yes.
after getting married. And for whatever reason, between the fibroids, the stress of a new marriage, a new church, and all the things, I just was not, I just wasn't, intimacy was very difficult for me. It was very hard for me. It was very painful. I was bleeding very heavily, and I was just really having a hard time adjusting to the new life of being a first lady and a wife. And it was just hard for us. And my husband thought it was him. He really thought it was him. And one day, I remember lots of situations where I would bleed so heavily that I would bleed through sheets, and I would wrap the sheets up really quickly and throw them in the trash and go buy more. Or I would wrap up my underwear and throw them in the trash and go buy more. Because this is a new
Yes.
marriage, right? This is a new marriage, a new relationship. We're moving in together. So, we were dating, and I would always, I was trying to be holy, y'all. I was trying to not have sex, and I would wrap myself up in the blanket, y'all, and go over his house, and I would be, snuggled in. But after we were married, you ain't snuggling, you ain't wrapping up in no blanket no more. It's like, come on, unwrap, okay? And get and let's get to it. And
Yes.
so,
Yes. Yes.
I was trying to hide, the issues that I had. I had shared it with him, but I was really trying to hide. I don't think he understood the severity, of the fibroids and how bad they were. And one day I was at Fox 5, and I was with my assistant, and she, my staff learned to kind of cover for me. They made the wrong right. And they would cover for me, literally. Like if I bled through something, they would tap me and hand me a change of clothes. If I, soiled something,
Yes.
like I remember sitting in people's chairs and doing their makeup, and I would always have to put a towel down first, and they would say, "Why you putting the towel down?" My sister knew, put a towel down, because if you don't put a towel down, she gonna
Yeah.
bleed through. But they wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
But they just kind of,
Yes.
they kind of understood my flow, literally and figuratively. And
Yeah.
so they cover for me a lot. But this day, my assistant couldn't cover. She was I was on set, there was blood running down my leg, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh my God," and I could see her face
Right.
while I'm on camera. So during the commercial break, I run off stage and I get into the car, and she said, "I got to drive you home." So she drives me home, and she lets me off at the garage. And as I'm coming into the harbor where we were living at the time, I called my husband and say, "I'm almost home. I'll see you in a few." But I never made it to the door. By the time I got to the garage and got out of the car, and she said, "Okay, I'll see you later," I literally passed out. I was laying face down in a pool of oil, from the car. The car has the oil
Yes.
deposits on the
Yes.
ground. I
Yes.
was laying face down, and my husband, because I called, he knew the timing of me coming in the house. And he said, "Something ain't right. Kim should be in the house by now." So he goes out to the garage, and there I am laying face down. I had passed out. My hemoglobin levels were so low. I had lost so much blood. And my husband said, "Enough is enough. Enough is enough." And he put his foot down,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he enforced or forced me to go and have emergency surgery. We called my doctor, and
Yes.
she was able to get me in within a few weeks, and I was able to have surgery. And it was a choice that I honestly would not have made had I just stopped running, because I was hiding. And I really want to just kind of enforce this to those women that are watching, them that will watch later. You can run, but you can't hide. Eventually, it is going to catch up with you. Unlike you, Dr. Nikki,
Yeah.
I did not change my lifestyle. I did not change my eating habits. I didn't do any of those things. I was trying to cover it up instead of clearing it up.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
we do that often. Now, mind you, I'm the master of that, being a makeup artist.
Yes.
I master covering up instead of
Mm.
clearing up skin. I
Yeah.
cover up issues because I am a temporary fix to somebody's
Yeah.
makeup. I come
Mm.
in and I do plastic surgery for the day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was trying to do plastic surgery on myself for a day. I was trying to
Yeah.
cover up instead of clearing it up.
Yeah.
And my husband, it caught up. And the pastor in him, the friend in him, you know, the wise man that
Mm.
he is, he was like, look,
Mm.
enough is enough. This is gonna kill you.
Right.
This
Right.
is going to kill you. So I wanted to tell you my story, and I wanted to tell it very openly because people look at our pictures and they think, oh, it's a perfect couple, they're a cute couple, you know, they fly and all that kind of stuff. But we were dealing with some major sexual intimate issues because we were cute, but we were not
Yeah.
cuddling. We were cute, we were not intimate. We just were not, because it took away my sex drive. It took away, it was very
Mm-hmm.
painful. I was bleeding most of the time. I was bleeding 22 to 26 days out of the month. By the time I finished bleeding, I was take a little bit of a reprieve, maybe felt 4 or 5 days, and I was bleeding all over again. So he didn't have a whole lot of time because he was traveling and I was
That's,
traveling, and you know, you trying to plan it out.
yeah.
And I was so tired
Mm-hmm.
that I just didn't have the energy. So I want to thank you, Pastor King, for being so understanding. And I want you to jump in this part of the conversation, if you don't mind. I wanted them to hear our conversation. Now I'm gonna have Brother Keith come on in. So I wanted to ask you the question: how did it make you feel knowing that I was not able to be intimate with you and watching me suffer like that? Was it like a dual feeling? Like, what were you feeling?
I think because we got married older, we were older when we got married. I think the maturity of it
Mm.
allows you to understand that when the person you love is in pain, you're in pain with them. When you're young and selfish, you think that, you think from a selfish mentality,
Mm.
what's wrong with you? You need to hurry up and take care of my needs. But the maturity and then the Christ in us allows us to realize that it's your needs are my needs. We can't be one without me feeling what you feel, without me going through what you're going through. We can't be one. Now, there were times she had to explain to me, like you said, doctor, that it's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not rejecting you because something is wrong with you.
Yeah.
There's something going on with me. And then that gives us the empathy to understand what she's going through. And how can I, help you, in this journey. Like you
Yeah.
said, intimacy is more than sex, although sex is important part of relationships. But how can I make you feel good about yourself? Even though you're dealing with this issue, I want you to still understand that you're beautiful to me. I still love you. My desire for you hasn't changed. So I think, as mature men, and you know yourself, my brother, that we want to make you feel good, let you know we still love you no matter what. This is not a deterrent for us, but it's something that's going to bond us closer together because we're going to figure this out as a couple. This is not your cross to bear. This is our issue to deal with.
I love that, and that really makes me feel good as a spouse to know that my husband felt that way. But I want Keith to jump in, and I want you to help us, or help men who are supporting their partners, understand with the conditions of fibroids. What were some of the things that you wish you had known or understood better about the fibroids and how they affected your wife?
I wish I would have known a lot of the research behind it,
Hmm.
the science behind it. What is a fibroid? Because I heard that in my family growing up, but I didn't know what it was. And even when Nikki um, got fibroids, I didn't know what it was. But here's the key, Kim. I just knew that she was in pain. I knew that she was in pain, and I knew that I had to support her at the end of the day. So it just happened to be fibroids. It could have been anything else. It could have been something else. But the fact that it was fibroids, Kim, and then with the cycle and the bleeding, and I'm just going to be honest with you, Brother King is probably a little more mature than I am. But let me tell you something, Kim. Here was my wife having a heavy menstrual cycle, right? And I love her so much. Okay. There were times when I was like, man, forget that. Let us be intimate anyway.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Because I love her that much that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But here's the issue it wasn't just the heavy bleeding, it was that she was in pain as well.
Yeah.
So then I had to retreat because the menstrual cycle, that's my wife, that's my love, that's my everything. So that didn't matter about the menstrual cycle, but the pain that accompanied it. Watching her balled up in a fetal position, and now I'm balled up in a fetal position. So when Brother King said it's right, when she was in pain physically and emotionally, I was in pain mentally and emotionally. Let me say that again. She was in pain physically and emotionally. I was in pain mentally and emotionally. So I honestly wish that had I known then what I know now, Kim, I would have done more of my due diligence in
Mm.
terms of
And
research.
what does that due diligence look like to you? Because I feel like the empathy alone is really so comforting, because it's really, I don't know what more you could do, but tell us what you thought you would have done. And I'd like to hear that from you as well.
Yeah, well, we had conversations with her physician, but even as a husband, I would have had even more conversations, not just necessarily behind her back, but yes, behind her back. I would have gone to that doctor and said, "What more can I do?" Because, like my wife said, sometimes we play doctor, and we'll get a symptom and we go look it up, and it's like, "Oh God, I have this," and that's not who we are. That wasn't my lane, so I would have done that, Kim. Had I known the science of it more, maybe I could have been more proactive. So I don't feel guilty, but I do know I could have been maybe more proactive in some areas that I was not. But I was there. I was there as a support system, but I definitely wish I would have known more about what are fibroids,
Yeah.
because she
And can I?
knew, she did the research, and there were times when she did the research, I felt I should have been there with her even during the research
And
process.
I think, and I'm gonna let Pastor talk, but I will say this, Boo. There were times where I kept explaining and he still didn't get it.
But yeah, that's twofold.
Mm.
She kept explaining I didn't get it, but there were moments that she didn't tell me she was going through what she was going through. So she kept covering it and hiding it, and I didn't know what it was, But finally, like I put my foot in, because in a new marriage, you just can't bulldog your way. You're going to go now.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
You don't start off like that. But
Mm.
eventually, I got tired of her being in pain and popping 800 milligrams, like they were Tic Tacs,
Yeah.
and like we're going to fix this. So part of it was I didn't understand, but also part of it was until she became open and honest about it. When I found her in the garage, that we've had enough of this. And
Mm.
like you said, Keith, it's about a matter of us learning more and understanding what it does to the body. We didn't have this opportunity to get a UFE, so she ended up getting a hysterectomy. But I
Mm.
walked every step with her through the hysterectomy,
Mm.
and after as well. So yeah.
This is
And
really good.
yeah, it is. It's really, really good just to hear the male perspective in terms of the level of support. I hear you talk about the 800 milligram. I hear Keith talk about the menstrual cycles. One thing I will say is I think Keith didn't have a clear understanding of what I meant by there were some changes. Of course, I'm not telling him at first either about me having to double up on my sanitary napkins or tampons and things of that nature. And so we were very, very intimate. Active in terms of us being intimate all the time. So, as things begin to change, you begin to wonder why, because just because your menstrual cycles is going off, so this is the norm, but this is different, Keith. It's just different. Not to mention that for me, I hear you talk about the 800 milligrams, but when my cycle wasn't on, I was taking that 800 or 4 Motrin or 4 whatever, and that was just so that I could at least do something. But I'm prepping myself. I would just call it prepping in terms of taking
Let's
those
talk about
pills. So
it. We were
yes,
prepping. We had to
yeah,
relax ourselves to prep
that's
because of
right.
the pain.
Exactly. So that it wasn't so you're taking the pills before the intercourse, because I know what it was going to be like afterwards, whether it be that intense pain, the spotting, just all of these things, because my cycle's not on right now. So yeah, so you end up taking more medication. It's just a lot. It was a lot to it. And as he began to really understand what I was going through, I think he was more receptive. And once again, letting that intimacy story, right? Something completely different than what the norm was for us, because we were just very, very active. So it was a change there. That was a major change for us. So yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
and
And I
Kim,
think that people need to understand that are listening to this. that the size and location really matter with the fibroids. So a lot of times, the pain that we're talking about with intimacy, having sex, with sexual intercourse, is because where the fibroid is sitting on the uterus. So it is difficult to have intercourse with that fibroid sitting there. So even though we're not actually having a menstrual cycle, but the fibroid is still pressing on organs, which cause the
Yes.
frequency in urination, the lower back pain, and of
Yep.
course the intimacy issues. So that's just to give clarification to those that are watching. But I want to talk a little bit about communication and these strategies, because you all are orators in your own right. And I want to talk a bit about communication strategy. And I want you to talk about how you approach the topic of fibroids with Keith. What were some of the strategies that you did? And then we'll kind of jump in.
Okay. Well, a strategy for me was just basically, he knew I was going into the doctor. He knew I was having some pain. When the doctor told me about the fibroids, I came home and I let him know exactly. Now, let me say this. Our focus at that time was really being able to have a child. So I was devastated. I just felt like I knew that my mom had to have a complete hysterectomy. And I just got married. I'm in college when she's doing this. And that was the main thing I was thinking. And I'm getting a little emotional. So pardon me, just real quick. But
okay.
The bottom line for me was to have to come home and tell him, as we've just gotten married. Here I am, this new wife, and have to, I'm thinking fibroids, I'm thinking hysterectomy. That's what I'm thinking, and with that being said, we just had the conversation. I just let him know, everything that the doctor told me. But then from there, and I'll be quite honest with you, I talked to him about those things, but not every single solitary thing I went through, I shared with him. I didn't, and it wasn't because I was hiding it, but I didn't really feel like he needed to know when things happened. If there was a gap, or where there was how can I say it? There was some, we were having an argument about maybe not being able to be intimate, or just various things related to just the intimacy piece. That's when I would really have to just break down and tell him everything. So it wasn't a fear. I just didn't really, after I told him about the fibroids, I just kind of kept on trying to live, trying to be, and also focused on my wellness. Keith also knows that, no, I didn't become a vegan as it relates to it. But when I told him I was stopping to eat the red meat and different things of that nature, and I picked up eating more vegetables, more the mushrooms, I still ate my seafood and did other things, but I could see changes, working out, doing different things of that nature, and just going in for my checkup. So communication with us was, I had the conversation with him. He knew what I was going through. I couldn't school him all the way 100% every time I'm going through something. But I did talk to Keith, and he listened. But there were times where they were barriers to the communication based on what we were going through at that particular time, just like anyone, when it's a major change in your relationship. And for me, it was almost embarrassment too, because I'm a new wife and we want to have a child, and this is it's because of me. So yeah, I was hurt, I was angry, I was bitter, I was a lot of things at the time. And once again, I watched my mom have a complete hysterectomy, and I just didn't want to have to do that. And I, so that's what it was for me.
Yeah, and because I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
to give us just a few strategies on how you communicate better and stay positive when you find out that your spouse is dealing with, a disease, or dealing with fibroids. Like, what are some strategies you can give, maybe the male population? Because a lot of times it's just women on these lives, but I'm hoping that there's some men that will pop on, or some advice that you can give, maybe some of the wives or girlfriends, on how to keep the relationship positive when there is an ailment like this.
Yeah, I love that. And first of all, I want to say, even though there might not be a lot of men on this live, I would hope that the women who are on this live would share with their better half, or with their other half, with their spouses or their bae or their fiance or whatever you call him. Let me say this, Kym. I want to go ahead and correct my wife, because my wife said she felt, and these were her feelings, and they were valid. One of the things we do say, and let me say this to the couples out there as well, and I know you and Dr. King do this. We always tell each other our feelings are valid, even if we don't agree with each other. Our feelings are valid, so we validate each other's feelings. The second thing is, I corrected her back in the day because she felt hurt disparaged, minimized because she thought it was because of her that we could not conceive. And I flipped that quickly. I quickly flipped that. I said, it's not you, it is us. And
Wow.
Kim, there were some health issues that I had as well, Kim, that could have contributed to us not being able to conceive. But the Lord blessed us with our son Keon, who's 29 years old, and we love our son. We love him, and yes, we had several failed attempts. I always say, we lost babies, or what happened. My wife even talked about, Kim, when we were having the arguments, when we weren't speaking, because we were younger. But we went through the marriage counseling, even with the fibroids. We did all of those things, Kim, because guess what? Like you said, Kim, I love what you said, sis. People see you publicly balling, but they don't see you privately falling. You know what I'm saying? And so here it was, Kim, that I had to, as a empathetic man who loved his wife, number one strategy, don't ever let your spouse feel as if she is the cause or the detriment in your marriage. Okay? No matter what. Number one, men, and that goes vice versa. Don't let your spouse feel that she is the detriment in your marriage. And that's how you should communicate to her. Number two, Kim, here's the number two strategy, men. I've never called my wife out of her name. When I was at my angriest, I've never called her out her name. Those are things. Those are non-negotiables, Kim.
That's right.
Yeah, you feel me? Those. So I've never called her out of her name. And another form of communication is touch. I understand. So that's real. So men, no matter how, and this is the other thing, Kim, that I did. And sometimes she didn't agree. You might not agree with this, but I know Brother King knows what I'm talking about. Kim, there were times when she would want to communicate, and Kim, I would just leave the room. Kim, I would leave the room, and she would say, why did you leave the room? And I said, in that moment, I would have said something that would have torn your soul apart. So rather than stay there, I walked away, because what I wanted to do is spare your heart. I wasn't concerned about your feelings. Okay, I was concerned about your heart. So I went to the other room to spare your heart. I wasn't concerned about your feelings. And so it was very important. The strategy number three, men, if you know that you're going to say something that is going to tear at your wife's soul, step away. And she may get angry, and she may look at that as a cowardly act. Okay, and she may look at that as flight. Fight or flight. But in that moment, I was not going to say what was on my mind, because I did not want to tear at my heart, my heart's heart. And that's why. So strategy number three, if you're going to say something that's going to be detrimental to your marriage, step away. And number four, Kim, I would say this: be more interested. Men, be more interested and less interesting. That means listen more than you talk. And my wife taught me that, because as a speaker, Kim, she'd be like, even to this day, Kim, she'd be like, Keith, you cut me off again. Kim, I'd be cutting her off all the time. She'd be like, Keith. Oh, yeah. Right. So she would say, Keith, you did it again. And so, Kim,
Are
guess
you
what?
guilty of that, Pastor
Yeah.
King?
So Kim, my wife taught me a lot about, even though I'm a master communicator, Kim, she taught me about communication. And then Kim, she did this, Kim, and last Kim, she started taking notes. And I didn't know why she was taking notes, Kim. So I thought she was just taking notes. I said, why are you taking notes? You just going to rebut everything I said? No, she said, I'm taking notes so that I can comprehend. I can comprehend. So yeah, so I just want to the men out there, a part of being the head of your house, listen to me carefully. A part of being the head of your house is being able to listen to your rib, being able to listen and to understand. And understand the head does not mean that you're dominant or domineering.
Dr. Nikki.
Yes,
Pastor
please
King, I
do.
want you to talk a little bit with us and just kind of piggyback off Brother Keith. Let's talk about a partner's role. Sometimes people struggle with talking about sex and their fears, but how can men make and create a safe space for us to share our fears and to share our sexual issues and our intimacy? How can men do that? And what are you doing to create that safe space?
Well, a couple of things, a couple of mantras I live by. One is that we don't compete, we complete. It's a problem when you're
Yeah.
competing. I'm not competing with her, I'm to complete her.
Yeah.
And so in completing her, I realized that when she shine, I shine. when we you said something about us, and she would tell you at the worst moments, I would send her, and at the end of every text, I put team what?
Team us.
Team us. Team us. At the end of every text, team us. So I live by that mantra. Second thing I live by also is that you can't hurt what you love.
Mhm.
Think about it. No one hurts. You hear somebody say, I love my car. If the car runs out of gas, if the car breaks down the side of the road, nobody kicks that car and bust the windows out. You stupid car. You go get it fixed because you love your car. People say they love their pets. You don't kick your dog because you love your dog. So it's impossible to hurt what you love. If you can hurt it, you don't love it. And so I live by those things. I can't. How can I hurt her? Because I love her. And creating that safe environment, as you said, Doctor, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I make sure you write it down so I can comprehend the spirit in which you said it in.
Yes.
So in order to have a safe space for us to communicate, common union. When we take communion at church, it means a common union. So if there's no common union, you're not communicating. So for us to communicate, what's the commonalities that we have? Communication is not monologue, it's dialogue. If I'm the only one talking, we're not communicating. It's dialogue. You talk, we listen, we take a chance, we hear one another, make sure that the spirit in which I'm saying it in, that you're receiving it.
Yes.
The spirit in which I mean it in, that you can comprehend it. So I think that's the safe space that we create for one another. So now she can share her fears, she can share her concerns. I can share my fears and my concerns, things that I don't understand. And once again, nobody is competing, but we're completing.
I love that. Wow, we got some dynamic. I want to jump right into some questions that have been. We have some questions from our doctors that I want to just share on the live tonight. And Dr. Spano, well, one of the questions is, can fibroids cause pain during sex? And Dr. Spano, and I think we both already answered that question, but she says yes, fibroids can cause pain during sex, especially if they're large and in certain positions. And I think that we talked a little bit about that in the uterus, and they can press on nearby tissues, making deep penetration and certain movements very uncomfortable. So for those of you who are wondering about that, the doctor has answered the question. And if this is something that you're dealing with, it is important that you discuss this with your doctor. Another question that we got in already, that it says, can fibroids cause bleeding after sex? And I think Dr. Nikki already answered that one. So we want to hear again from our doctor. And Dr. Spano says, yes, that fibroids can cause bleeding after sex, particularly if they're near the cervix. So if you have fibroids near your cervix, that kind of gives you an indicator if you are spotting after sexual intercourse, or if they're in the lining of the uterus, you can have some spotting. And this can lead to heavier bleeding. So if you're experiencing this, it is important that you be evaluated to see if the fibroids are that cause or the cause of that. We offer a service here called the UFE, which is the Uterine Fibroid Embolization. It is a non-surgical procedure that we offer here at the USA Fibroid Centers that helps you to rid yourself of the fibroids. It is literally a in and out procedure. You will not lose any time from work. It is so easy and so fast and so quick. And it's something that it's an option that I wish I had when we were dealing with the issue versus me getting the hysterectomy. I wish that I had had an opportunity to know about the UFE. One of the major things that we really enforce here at USA Fibroid Centers is that you know your options. You should know your options. You should know exactly what you're dealing with. Someone is asking where are our centers located. We have over actually have over 50 centers around the country. So we have centers in New York, in Atlanta. We have them here in the DMV. We have them in the South. So make sure once you call that phone number, let's find out if there's a location near you. We have them in Philadelphia, all over the country. And so we definitely want to be able to help you with your fibroid journey and to rid yourself of the fibroids. But I do want to close out, and I want to just leave the women with this. And I think I said this earlier, and it's very important that I reiterate this point, and that is not to cover it up, but clear it up. It's very important because so many of us are covering up by having to change your clothes in the car and multiple sets of pads and pain pills, and we're drinking lots of coffee. We're doing all the things to cover up the symptoms. And for those of you who are not symptomatic and you have fibroids, That's another thing. If you have, maybe you have heavy periods, but you don't have the lower back pain, or maybe you don't have all of the symptoms, but just a few. We do have people who are not symptomatic, and they still have fibroids. So it's very important that you're getting your checkups. Very, very important that you are getting your checkups and you're consulting with your doctors and finding out exactly what is ailing you. Why am I feeling like this? It's so very important so that you are not covering it up, but you are clearing it up. And so I want to just make sure I emphasize that. Learn more at usafibroidcenters.com or call 855-615-2555.